I was at y'all about Rico from StreetScores, and this is somewhat of a Rico report because we're going to combine everything that went down and Dan Quinn said on Monday, and then everything that went down on Tuesday. I'm recording this right now. It's 11:40 p.m. I wanted to just go ahead and combine it all in one big video. A bunch of injury updates. Dan Quinn gave basically Jayden Daniels' checklist for if he can do these things, he'll play against the Raiders. If not, he won't. We're going to break that down. The Washington Commanders went and signed a new running back. They went and brought in an old face in edge rusher Preston Smith for a workout. They brought in a whole bunch of people for workouts between Monday and Tuesday. It was a double-digit amount. So we're going to break all of that down, of course, as well. And I also have a trivia question for you. I'm trying to remember to do these more often. I've just been all over the place, so I've been able to record my 2 videos a day like I want to and stuff like that. And also, the trivia questions have suffered a little bit as well. But here, what nickname was Washington Pro Bowl cornerback Joe Lavender from 1976 to 82 given for his 6'4", 190-pound frame? I'm going to give you the answer to that at the end of this video. But if you already know, just go ahead and tell me in the comment section. And without further ado, before we even dive in everything, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Shouts out to my watch to the end gang, man. Shouts out to y'all, man. And shouts out to my late night crew. You know, this isn't as late as we typically are for the late night crew, because by the time this comes out, it's 12 something. A lot of the times I'm putting videos out at 4 a.m. But out of the way, shouts out to the late night crew. And again, shouts out to the watch to the end gang. Let's go ahead and dive into this video right now, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so first of all, and I'm kind of going somewhat in chronological order with a lot of the things we're talking about in this video, because at 3 p.m. on Monday, September 15th, the Commanders officially announced that they placed running back Austin Ekeler and Dietrich Wise on their injured reserve list. So that's it. They're done for the season, we're assuming. I mean, you never know, because Jonathan Allen caught us off guard last year where we just assumed he was done for season, and he came back for the last couple of games and played in the playoffs and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens there. I just highly doubt it, though. Just assume we will not see Austin Ekeler nor Dietrich Wise for the rest of this year. And like I've already talked about, you may not even see them on this roster beyond this season as well. That could be it for both of them. Hoping that it's not, you know what I'm saying? Hoping not only, that would be great if they came back this year, but I like Austin Ekeler and Dietrich Wise enough. Hey, man, bring them back in the offseason next year as well. We'll see, though. Of course, you're looking for upgrades. Of course, you're looking for younger guys at both of those positions. And we may go all in on edge rusher next offseason. You thought we would do it this past offseason? Nah, they may go all in on a young guy in the draft. That may, you probably could guarantee our first round pick will be an edge rusher, but who knows? Kind of thought that last year. But then they went and signed defensive end Jalen Holmes, who can play both D tackle and edge rusher. He's kind of like this regime's James Smith-Williams, and I honestly predicted him to make the final 53-man roster originally. So I was not surprised that when Dietrich Wise ended up hurt and gone for season, that Jalen Holmes, my fault, would be the guy that would immediately come from the practice squad first, because I thought again he wouldn't even go to the practice squad. So once there's a spot available in the 53-man roster, I thought he would have been there off of initial cuts anyway. So now he's back up where I thought he would be. And then wide receiver Chris Moore also got upgraded from the practice squad as well. That's more than likely because Noah Brown just stays hurt. He's more than likely not even playing against the Raiders. We're going to get into all of that. Dan Quinn gave updates on Noah Brown and John Bates and all of those guys. We're going to get to that soon. But again, we're starting with 3 p.m. Dan Quinn didn't speak until 3:30 p.m., so just buckle up. And then the Washington Commanders also signed running back Chase Edmonds to the practice squad. So they put 2 guys from the 53-man roster onto the injured reserve. They took 2 practice squad guys and put them on the 53-man roster. And then to replace those 2 practice squad guys, they only replaced them with 1. That's why they end up signing a guy on Tuesday, an additional guy to the practice squad, to officially make it 2 guys on the practice squad added in the past couple of days to make up for losing Jalen Holmes and Chris Moore from the practice squad to the 53-man roster. So now we're basically back to the same amount of roster. But again, they signed running back Chase Edmonds, and that's a pretty notable name amongst running backs, especially over the past few years. Tom Pelissero announced that in addition to Chase Edmonds, who signed to the practice squad, the Commanders also worked out veteran running backs Demetric Felton, who was with the Commanders all offseason, preseason, all of that type of stuff, and he's pretty explosive. He's just not like a very complete back, still some rawness to his game, but you just never know. Khalil Herbert, I know y'all, if you play fantasy football, Khalil Herbert is a big name for you. He bailed me out a couple of times where I'm like, this guy may not necessarily be like a premier back, but you know how fantasy football get a little weird, and sometimes it be the most random guy to kind of bail you out. Then Naeem Miller-Hines, another guy that over the past couple of years, if you played him at the right time, he might have won you some fantasy football games. So that's another familiar name right there, as well as defensive backs Trey Brown, Alex Johnson, and Trayvon Mullen. So now that's interesting because that shows that maybe Jonathan Jones is more hurt than we thought. Like the big injuries right now outside of Austin Eckler and Dietrich Wise going to the injured reserve. And again, we're going to talk about this more a little bit later, but it's John Bates at tight end. It's Noah Brown at wide receiver. He's been hurt since mandatory minicamp all the way back in like May. So there's not necessarily a surprise there. And then you also have Jonathan Jones, who also sustained, I guess, a significant injury against the Green Bay Packers on Thursday night. So now we're also bringing in defensive backs as well to work out. So it's a pretty ugly situation. Now going back to the running backs, I've talked about the Michigan legend, Donovan Edwards. He's already on the practice squad. I would love to give him an opportunity, but I guess they preferred to go with a more veteran presence. Shouts out to George Carmi. He said Chase Edmonds has familiarity with Cliff Kingsbury's offense going back to Arizona. That's a great point there. Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach for Arizona when Chase Edmonds was having his best seasons as an NFL pro. Edmonds displayed some pass catching prowess, topping out at 67 targets in 2020. Like this guy, if you're looking for like the ultimate Austin Eckler replacement, the guy that, I mean, of course, going into week 3 of a regular season, it's going to be hard to scramble and find it Austin Eckler just off the street, but Chase Edmonds is probably the closest to it. Now, of course, I'm assuming that Ja'Cory Cross-Kimary will be your starting running back moving forward, and maybe maybe they could be looking for a new starting running back and to where like Ja'Cory Cross-Kimary stays at RB2. But as of right now, at least for the next week or two, I'm going to assume that they don't try to immediately replace RB1 on this roster. Ja'Cory Cross-Kimary to RB1, and then if they do bring in an Austin Eckler-like guy, that guy's going to be RB2 or RB3 or something like that. I don't think they're going to continue to step on Ja'Cory Cross-Kimary's toes. I think it's time to finally unleash him, but most importantly, Chase Edmonds is like the closest you can get to finding an Austin Eckler off the streets randomly mid-season. George Carmi also pointed out the fact that, however, he hasn't been a central figure in a running back room since 2022, which is a good point. I mean, technically 2023, I mean, he played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he technically played in 13 games, but he just didn't do a lot. Like, even though it says on Pro Football Reference he played in 13 games, the guy only had 16 targets on 14 receptions as a receiving target in those 14 games. I mean, he was there, he just didn't contribute a lot, or at least he wasn't targeted a lot. Again, the fact that he played in 13 games and only had 16 targets is actually pretty crazy, because going back to just the year before that, 2022, he had 23 targets and 16 catches. Then in 2021, the year before that, he had 51 targets with 43 catches on those targets. And in 2020, the season where he played the most and contributed the most, 65 targets under Cliff Kingsbury with 53 catches for 402 receiving yards, and that's the most receiving yards he's ever had in a season in his NFL career, because he had 103 in 2018, 105 in 2019, then he had this huge jump to 402. This is another fantasy football saver right here, where if you had Chase Edmonds in 2020 on your team, he may have won you a couple of games, because he had a 402 receiving yards in 2020. That was his most notable season. That's even when he had his highest grades as well. Like, he had a 77 receiving grade from Pro Football Focus, and it was also one of his highest overall grades with a 69.2, also as like a running back and all of that type of stuff as well, because he is a running back by nature, but he's more of a receiving back. And what do we think of Austin Eckler as? More of a receiving back that can run the ball as well. Chase Edmonds is that, but again, I'm not going to sit here and say he's as good as Austin Eckler, but again, this is probably the best you can do if you're looking for an Austin Eckler replacement again mid-season. Because then in 2021, he still had 311 receiving yards. That's not bad at all, but then it just keeps teetering off, because 2022, he had 157 receptions, and that came while being on like 2 different teams. I think he was on the Broncos and Miami in 2022 with those 157 receiving yards. And then in 2023, he only had 81 receiving yards while somehow playing in 13 games, because he played in 13 games total between the Miami Dolphins and Denver Broncos in 2022. The 8 games with Miami and the 5 games with Denver was the same amount of 13 games. And even in 2022, 13 games. 2021, 12 games and still had more receiving yards. So I don't know what happened in 2023. I haven't sat down and actually looked at the all 22 of Chase Edmonds, but you could just see that even though he played in a similar amount of games that he typically does in the season, he just didn't get as many targets nor receiving yards. So I just guess they didn't really feel like they needed to utilize him as much. And then also moving on, speaking of running backs, Dan Quinn said that Chris Rodriguez will, quote, be back into the fold, unquote, but that he's good with Bill as a pass blocker. He said, quote, we feel comfortable. We wouldn't have put him in if not, unquote. That's a lot to unpack. So first of all, again, Dan Quinn had his press conference at 3:30 p.m. on Tuesday. Those are like 2 major things right there alone, just from those little bit of words. That Chris Rodriguez will be back into the fold. Sounds like he will, like Dan Quinn has officially confirmed, he will be active going into this Raiders game for the first time all season. Chris Rodriguez will play in a regular season game for the first time in this 2025 season. It's going to be Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt, Jeremy McNichols, and Chris Rodriguez. Now we'll see how the players get the carries get split up, because Jeremy McNichols is going to always be around. And the reason that he was active over Chris Rodriguez the first 2 weeks is because he also contributes as a special teamer. Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt nor Chris Rodriguez can do that. But as far as carries go, as far as purely just being a running back, will Chris Rodriguez play more and get more carries than Jeremy McNichols? Does Jeremy McNichols eat up some of the Austin Eckler that we lose in as far as production and snaps and carries and targets and things like that? Or does Chris Rodriguez immediately come in off the practice squad and do that instead of Jeremy McNichols? And Jeremy McNichols just basically stays as RB3, and then Chris Rodriguez just catapults him to become RB2. We'll see. Also, that lets me know that even though they signed Chase Edmonds to the practice squad, even though they worked out all of these other running backs, and even though that there is the potential, we're going to talk about it soon, that we could trade for a big-time running back potentially. Sounds like they're at least going to rock with Chris Rodriguez as your RB2 or 3 going into this Raiders game. And then also, the fact that Dan Quinn said that they're comfortable with Bill as a pass protector. I mean, I was looking for possible reasons and excuses as to why Ja'Cory wasn't on the field more against the Packers and why he wasn't getting more carries. And I just had to assume, I had to guess that maybe they just don't like him as a pass protector. Well, now Dan Quinn is saying that they like him as a pass protector, so I'm confused. I'm like, why was he not on the field more against the Packers then? If they're comfortable with him in that way, why did he not play more? What exactly am I missing here? Please let me know. And then also moving on from that, Dan Quinn said that Eckler's role won't be replaced with one person. That's not a plug and play type of role. I mean, I guess the closest thing to it would be if you were to bring in Chase Edmonds and you trust him enough to actually play on Sundays for you in regular season games that actually matter and count in the wins and loss columns. I feel like maybe if we got Chase Edmonds involved earlier, like in the training camp, he was able to play in the preseason with us, maybe they'd be a little bit more comfortable with him, since he is like the closest thing to Austin Eckler that we have just out there available on the streets. It's even on our roster right now. Chris Rodriguez is more of like a Brian Robinson type. Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt is in his own mode, and again, Jeremy McNichols is here for special teams for the most part. Nobody, even as much as I like Donovan Edwards and I love his potential, I think he could potentially play an Austin Eckler-like role, but a lot of people feel like he's not necessarily ready just yet. Chase Edmonds is probably the closest thing you could get to an Austin Eckler type of role being just plugged in, but Dan Quinn says that they're not ready for that just yet, especially not with him. So it sounds like Austin Eckler's duties and responsibilities will get split amongst Ja'Cory, Jeremy, and Chris Rodriguez. We'll see. And then also, Commander's Realm brings up a great point, though, that Adam Peters was in San Francisco when they grabbed Christian McCaffrey mid-season via a trade with the Carolina Panthers. I think they'll stick with their guys for at least a couple of weeks. I agree with that. They're going to at least give these guys a shot. But if that role is severely missed, I wouldn't put it past them to poke around for a guy like Alvin Kamara or Breece Hall. I would not be surprised at all. I mentioned Alvin Kamara just a couple of days ago in a video that, hey, man, the Saints suck. Alvin Kamara, but it's just his age, bro. It's the age with Alvin Kamara. Even though he's still really good, he showed us last year he's still really good. He did us bad last year. We could not cover that guy, especially with Jordan McGee hurt. We had nothing for him. So he still has a lot left in the tank. He's still one of the better running backs in the NFL. He's just not at like a Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson level, but he would make this running back room better. But again, like I said, trading for a running back will hurt my soul. But hey, man, Alvin Kamara is, I've been rooting for him since high school because he is from Atlanta. Even with his tenure, he went to Tennessee, then he transferred to Alabama and all of that type of stuff. Now he's been on the Saints. Still been rooting for him. But we'll see. I doubt that we trade for a running back midseason, and even if we do, doubt it's an Alvin Kamara, but that is a situation where it's like he's still a really good running back. He's on a terrible team. He may want to abandon ship and go play for a potential Super Bowl contender, at least a playoff contender. I can see that making sense. But again, giving up draft capital for somebody his age at running back, that would hurt my soul, I'm not going to lie. Then also, Dan Quinn, while addressing the media, confirmed that Austin Ekeler and Dietrich Wise will be out for the season. And then, you saw that and we already talked about it, they already put those guys on injured reserve. Both players have made a tremendous impact on the team. And then he also pointed out the fact that Noah Brown, Jonathan Jones, John Bates, and Jayden Daniels are still technically being evaluated. Dan Quinn said they'll have to move around guys on the defensive line to compensate for Dietrich Wise's size and strength and the run game. And I agree, that's another guy where it's going to be really hard to find a Dietrich Wise off the streets mid-season. That's going to have to be something to where multiple guys kind of make up for his loss, just like multiple guys in the running back room are going to have to make up for Austin Ekeler's loss. There's a reason that those guys were technically starting for us, especially Dietrich Wise. Austin Ekeler was more of he was starting, but a lot of us wanted to go ahead and get Ja'Cory Carson-Merritt involved. We wanted him to eventually overtake Austin Ekeler at some point, maybe even as soon as that Packers game week 2. But Dietrich Wise was the definitive starting edge rusher opposite of Dorrance Armstrong for this season. So losing him is an even probably bigger impact than even what we lost in Austin Ekeler. Dan Quinn, shouts out to Chris Russell, he pointed out the fact that Dan Quinn just said he didn't want to give away too much of the plan to replace Dietrich Wise and his size, but wonder if that includes using Javon Kinlaw and or Deron Payne outside more, which is the Dan Quinn and Pete Carroll, the way that they used to call the elephant in. And I did a full breakdown as to why Javon Kinlaw could potentially be great for that role in a video that I did months ago. So go check that out if you want to. And now, before we dive into all of the other updates in this video, and I'm already 17 minutes into recording, so this video is about to be longer than I even thought it would be. But hey, man, we are in full effect, man. Football is in a full swing, which means you have a chance to 1,000 times your cash on daily fantasy football. Washington football has never been more exciting. Even after an L like that to the Packers, there's still a lot of optimism and talent on this team. I refuse to believe we're just going to go out like that for the rest of the season. I think we're going to bounce back. I think we may even end up playing against them again as an NFC championship game. And you have elite players like top 5 quarterback Jayden Daniels get healthy as soon as possible. Terry McLaurin, we got to get him involved as soon as possible. And again, Deebo Samuel, like I keep saying, he's looked like the best defensive player on our entire team. So let's keep that going. And you can pick on stats for those stars like touchdowns, passing yards, receiving yards, fantasy points, and more for up to 1,000 times payout on Sleeper. And if you're right on your picks, you can win big money on, and you can use promo code SCORE, that's SCORE, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. You can even just click the link at the top of the description in this video and every video on live stream that I'll be doing all season. And again, it's not just the Commanders and the NFL. You can have fun, play daily fantasy for the NBA when it returns, MLB, NHL, college football is going crazy right now, especially my dogs, college basketball, and even the WNBA, all on Sleeper. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. $1 minimum entries for users. And as always, man, I like to just go straight to the app. You click on picks at the bottom. You go to the area where it says top instead of NFL, and I'm looking at NFL popular duos every time. And there's this one that I'm looking at in particular where it's this James Cook anytime touchdown over and Devon Achane and anytime touchdown over as well, because Devon Achane has had at least one touchdown each of the first 2 games of the season. I think he can get one against the Bills in this Thursday night game. And then James Cook, that Dolphins defense looks like food. And James Cook has had even more touchdowns than Devon Achane. He had 1 touchdown week 1, and then he had 2 in week 2. So I think that James Cook will get at least 1. And if both of those guys are able to get a touchdown in any way, whether it's running, receiving the ball, catching it, whatever. As long as they score a touchdown, both of those guys at least score one touchdown in that game, you could turn 10 into 28, basically almost 29, 20 into 57, and 100 into 289. I'm actually about to go ahead and submit this one right now. I'm gonna go ahead and put this one in for 10. I ain't gonna lie, because I think this is quite possible, man. Let's go ahead and do it, man. Let's go ahead and put that one in. I think, man, come on now. If everything serves me right, we can go ahead and have some fun with this one. But as always, man, shouts out to Sleeper, man, and you can use promo code SCORE. Again, the link is in the description of this video and every video on live stream I'm doing all year. Now let's get back to the second half of this video. So now we can get into the Jayden Daniels injury update as far as all of this goes. Because again, Dan Quinn we got the update. I gave y'all the update with Adam Schefter and everybody and other sources reporting on the Jayden Daniels injury. But we hadn't heard from Dan Quinn just yet by the time I did that video. Now we've heard from Dan Quinn. Again, he spoke to the media at 3:30. Of course, the first questions that he was asked was about Jayden Daniels, because a lot of the other stuff that he talked about, like the Chris Rodriguez will be back into the fold and they're comfortable with Bill as a pass protector, that was around like 3:50. His press conference started at 3:30. He's already answering questions about Jayden Daniels by 3:33. He said Jayden Daniels did have an MRI in his day-to-day. He has already started his return to play process. Shouts out to Surge the Shooter. He said, I see Jayden playing Sunday. If not the whole game, at least give it a go to see what's going on. I wouldn't be surprised. But before we even dive further into the Jayden Daniels injury, worst case scenario, if Jayden Daniels cannot go this Sunday against the Raiders, Resh Manuel pointed out the fact that Marcus Mariota incidentally is one NFL start away from 75 and 3 touchdowns away from 100. If he's going to get one Sunday, it'd be cool to see him get the other. One start from 75, 3 touchdowns away from 100. He could probably get those out the way against the Raiders in a clean sweep. He could probably score 3 touchdowns. He scored 3 touchdowns, I believe. I think 2 passing and 1 rushing against the Cowboys the last game of the season last year. So he probably could go out there and get 3 touchdowns against a fairly weak Raiders defense right now, even though they do have Max Crosby and Josh Connolly's look like food against these elite edge rushers he's going to get so far this year. But I think Marcus Mariota, he's one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL, specifically for the Cliff Kingsbury system that requires a quarterback to at least be moderately mobile, like I've talked about in my previous couple of videos this week. But that's a good point by Resh Manuel, though. Great stat pool that, hey, 1 start away, 3 touchdowns away from pretty significant, hallmarks in his career. Hey, if Jayden Daniels can't go, and I'm rooting for Jayden Daniels to go. Like, I would love for Marcus Mariota to hit those, but at the end of the day, Jayden Daniels, if he's good enough to play him. I'm not here for these statistical accomplishments and things like that. I'm trying to win. But if, say, Jayden can't go and Marcus Mariota has to go, I hope he goes crazy. I hope we win and he gets all of his stats while doing it. And then shouts out to Commander's Realm. He said that he's relieved that the MRI didn't reveal anything serious, but not being able to go coming off of 10 days of rest is going to be concerning regardless of how it's worded. I completely agree. He has 10 days between the Packers game and the Raiders game. If he can't go by then this is a little bit more concerning moving forward. Like, if he just plays, then I won't necessarily think nothing of it, but the fact that 10 days of rest isn't enough to get him back on the field, that is pretty concerning. But then he also said, however, Jayden isn't the whole team. And if they think they can be safe and get by with just number 8 for a week, then go ahead and do it. And I'm definitely leaning more towards, if Jayden Daniels is not 100% ready to go, I trust it's between trusting Mariota enough to go win against, especially arguably the weakest team we're going to have on our schedule, or the least difficult, because I'm not going to call any team on our schedule weak, but the least difficult opponent that we have on our schedule are the Raiders. And if there's a team that the Marcus Mariota could beat, it's them. And then on top of that, I'm just so bought into our chances of going on a deep playoff run, maybe even make it to the Super Bowl this year. We need Jayden Daniels for all of that. Don't risk a worse injury happening, the injury worsening off of going against the Las Vegas Raiders and potentially jeopardize what can happen later on down the line. We got to go Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles, then playoffs. Like, we need Jayden for that for sure. We need Jayden against Kansas City. We need Jayden against the Chargers week 5. You know what I'm saying? They look like one of the best teams in the NFL. We just went against arguably one of the best teams in the NFL with Green Bay. You got to have Jayden there week 5. So, and that may be the game that Samuel Cosme returns off of the PUP list as well. So, hey, man, fully loaded against the Chargers. If we have to sit him against the Raiders and maybe even sit him against the Falcons, I would hate to do it, but it's just not worth risking the rest of the season off of just these 2 games. And then especially with the Falcons, their pass rush looking crazy, but I already talked about that in my previous video. But Dan Quinn talked about Jayden Daniels. He said he was hurt on a tackle, but it was good that he finished the game. And I think that is a good point, that like it can't be that bad if he was able to finish the game. We'll see. But at the same time, they kept telling us it was bruised ribs last year. It was evidently broken ribs, and Jayden Daniels was still playing through it, and he didn't have good game. He didn't have his best games while playing through it, but hey, he played through it. That guy's tough. But just while looking at the play right here again, like I showed y'all in the previous video, Chris Russell pointed out the fact that the first play of the fourth quarter, and 2 plays later, he threw a touchdown pass to Zach Ertz. And then even beyond that, on the play in between this and the touchdown, he appeared a bit ginger in delivery on a completion to McLaurin. So you saw like the injury starting to really like take effect on Jayden Daniels. And then on the touchdown itself, he somehow looked confident and bouncy. So guessing that the knee became very sore and perhaps inflamed, etc. on the flight home or after sleeping. So it probably hurt a lot like initially after he heard it. Then he was able to kind of ignore it a little bit as the game went on, and that's how he was able to throw that touchdown to Zach Ertz, I believe, or was it Deebo Samuel? One of those guys or whatever. I think that was the fourth quarter one, so that may have been either way. Doesn't matter who's the recipient of it, but he was able to throw a touchdown pass, probably because he was able to ignore the pain for a little bit. Then by the time the game ended and they're getting back on the plane and all of that type of stuff, that's probably when the injury felt is worse, probably hurt the most. You know, he didn't have any more adrenaline carrying him to ignore the pain or anything like that. It was just nothing but pain and an L on the way back to the DMV. Dan Quinn also said that the quarterback injury goes through the same process as other positions, but it just gets more attention, and we recognize what Jayden is and the impact he has on his team. So basically saying that, A, he's going to go through the same injury process that all of these other guys go through. You know what I'm saying? He has to pass certain markers. We're not going to force him onto that field if he's not 100% ready. He has to do certain things to get on that field. Also, Nikki Javala directly asked Dan Quinn if Jayden Daniels had an actual sprain to his knee, and Dan Quinn basically ignored it. So I'm hearing reports from a lot of different sources that Jayden Daniels' official injury is specifically a sprained knee, but Dan Quinn refused to give us any of that information. Then also moving on, Ian Rappaport tweeted at some point, and because I guess this is just big news, that Marcus Mariota is the team's backing up and has proven capable. He could very well be thrust into action against the Raiders. That's not necessarily a declaration. That's just a hypothetical out there. I just wanted to bring in the Ian Rappaport part of it because this is pretty big news. It's not just something that's only in Commander's Lane. This is breaking news. Jayden Daniels potentially hurt, may not be able to play against the Raiders. Marcus Mariota may have to start in for him, and he was kind of backing Marcus Mariota by saying like, hey, this guy has won games. You know, as a starting quarterback, they might be all right with him. Dan Quinn also said that they will take the quarterback decision all the way to Friday. So, mind you, it's going into 10 a.m. right now on Wednesday, September 17th. It's going to be a couple of days of wondering and waiting to see like what's going on with Jayden Daniels officially. He said that he expressed confidence in Marcus Mariota if he needs to play, though, of course. But then you have WrestleMania that said that from Dan Quinn's vagueness about the Jayden Daniels injury and everything, he feels like there's no way Jayden Daniels is playing Sunday. It's like a whole 1 minute and 27-second clip basically breaking down like if Jayden Daniels were not hurt and if he were available to go against the Raiders, Dan Quinn would have just said it. He's good to go. Don't worry about it. But the fact that they kept it super vague sounds like more than likely Jayden Daniels actually is hurt to the point that he may not play. The Resh Manuel said, I'm of the same mentality that while you don't want a 1-2 start ideally, non-conference road games, especially early, are the best losses to risk, and that's an interesting point there. But then my boy Jamal Edlet Martellus said Jayden is on that field if there's no risk of structural damage to that knee. That boy has no plans to sit, and I bet Cliff and Dan see it the same way in terms of letting them hoop. I mean, I could see that mentality as well. Then my dog Rio Robinson, he said, I don't think we see 5 again until the Los Angeles Chargers game week 5, which again, what could be the game that Samuel Cosme finally returns. And then Felix Tramiel said that he gave it an 85-15 that Jayden Daniels does play on Sunday. So it's kind of a lot of back and forth right now as to whether he'll play or not. Everybody has varying opinions. We'll see. Dan Quinn said that the return to play process for Daniels involves making sure he's strong enough to be on the field, and then the confidence that he has a good change of direction. They're not going to miss a step of this process. So they want to make sure not only is he strong enough to be on the field, like even if it's painful, you can play through it, but we need to make sure that you're strong enough to be able to like plant on it. If you're trying to change directions while using your mobility, you need to be able to plant on it. When you're making a throw, you need to be able to plant on it. So is your leg strong enough with your knee injury to be able to do all of that? And then secondly, even if it is strong enough, if you're overthinking things, if you're worried about the pain and overthinking it too much and it's affecting how you play because you're worried about your knee injury, that's a big no-no as well. So not only do you have to be physically all right to go out there, but also mentally, are you ready to deal with whatever comes with it, whether it's pain, discomfort, with stiffness, whatever, are you ready? And shouts out to Dan Quinn for letting us know that they would not miss a step of the process. And I truly believe him and trust the fact that, hey, he's only going to play if he can play. But again, mind you, he played with broken ribs for a few games last year, and they called it bruise. So if they could do that last year, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays against the Raiders this year, because this knee injury doesn't even sound as bad as broken ribs. So we'll see. And then also, Dan Quinn, I mean, if you want like a full 1 minute and 23-second video of him talking about protecting players from themselves, from coming back from injury and stuff like that, here's the clip right here. I think it's worth it. So 1 minute and 23 seconds. If you want to skip it, just go ahead and skip ahead as well.
He did have an MRI, and he has already begun his return to play process with us. He is truly day-to-day. What does that mean for Sunday? I can't tell you that now. I'll have more to share on that when we get to Wednesday and practice and what that would look like. But in the return to play, he and any of the guys would have to hit all of the markers for us to get back and do our thing.
You've talked in the past about having to protect players from themselves. With a guy like Jayden and his competitive drive, how hard is that to balance what I'm guessing he's going to want versus what you guys have to look at kind of long term? Yes,
you are correct. That's just who he is, which I also love about him, by the way. But it is that's my job, to make sure that, one, I'm getting all the information, from the medical side. Is he hitting all the tests? And then you also have to trust your eyes. Where's he at? Where are we going? And so we're just not going to miss it, JP, for he and for any of the guys in that space. So that is the good part of being a competitor. But I'm constantly watching and pushing to see. And then before we even get onto the practice field, they have to go through a pretty strenuous testing to see where they're at even before the actual on-field, reps begin. So that's for he and for a couple of the other guys as well.
And hey, man, things could be worse, bro. I know this Jayden Daniels injury really sucks for us, bro, but the Vikings quarterback, JJ McCarthy, is expected to be sidelined at least 2 to 4 weeks with a high ankle sprain, bro, which means that now Carson Wentz is going to be their starting quarterback in 2025. We've already been through that. Also, with Joe Burrow out for a while with turf toe, now it looks like the game between the Bengals and the Vikings is going to be Jake Browning versus Carson Wentz. I'm not watching that game. Shouts out to Mitchell Tinsley for making plays out there, though, but I'm not, I repeat, not watching that game for nothing. Also, shouts out to Steve Shoup. He pointed out the fact that we aren't even 2 full weeks into the season, and we already have Purdy and McCarthy missing 2 to 4 weeks, Burrow missing 3 months, Jayden may be missing at least a week, and Fields is also dealing with a concussion, and Paul Connor said, yep, rule change incoming. Which is, kind of a joke, but yeah, the NFL typically, if they start to lose a lot of star power, especially at the quarterback position, which is how they make a lot of their money from viewership and stuff like that, because of star quarterbacks, very fun and watchable quarterbacks that draw the attention of basically the world. They're about to make some rule changes to, hey, whatever we got to do for our quarterbacks to get hurt less, then we got to do something about it. Even if it's strategically unfair completely to a defense, it's still got to get done. Well, Jayden Daniels, in his case, you already changed the rule. Y'all already made it to where hip drop tackles are illegal, and then the Packers refs folded on it, didn't call it, so now the defenders are no less discouraged to keep doing hip drop tackles. So thanks for dropping the ball on that one, refs. I know the NFL is super upset with them on that one, because the Commanders are tied with the Chiefs for the most standalone and primetime games this season. So they're banking a lot of the money that they basically make this season on Jayden Daniels not only playing well, but being healthy enough to go out there and play in the first place. So I know the NFL, if there's an NFL Illuminati, I don't know, man. Them refs in that Packers game may not be safe, bro. Because Jayden Daniels, the NFL got they got some money tied up with Jayden Daniels' success this year, bro. And then also, just to remind y'all that David J. Chow, he's a doctor. He's literally the Pro Football Doc on Twitter. That's his ad and everything like that. And now, granted, this is him from the outside looking in. He was not there when Jayden Daniels got his MRI. But based off of everything that he's hearing from behind the scenes, his sources, and also from looking at the injury play that I showed y'all earlier, he said that he's not really worried about Jayden Daniels getting the MRI done on his knee. He feels like that there is no structural damage, and that's the most important part here. It could be hurt, it could be very painful, but as long as there's no structural damage, he should be able to play against the Raiders. And he said that he wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't miss any time at all. And DC Sports Dre even quote tweeted it and pointed out the fact that he's usually on point with injuries for what it's worth. Like this David J. Chow guy, usually when he gives a diagnosis, he's usually been on point. So maybe he's on point with Jayden Daniels as well. I mean, we're talking about all of this Marcus Mariota stuff and these what ifs. Jayden Daniels may end up just playing on Sunday against the Raiders. Again, 10 days of rest. I think he'll be just fine, especially since he was able to ignore the pain immediately afterwards to throw a touchdown to either Zach Ertz or Deebo Samuel, whichever one it was. And so I think 10 days of rest, I think he should be just fine with it. The inflammation going down and stuff like that. I think he'll be good to go. And then now we got to talk about the fact that Noah Brown and John Bates are considered long shots to play versus the Raiders after both of them suffered groin injuries per Dan Quinn, bro. That is scary, bro. Shouts out to Real Robinson. I completely agree. He said the Bates one stings, but the Noah Brown one is like, all right, we need to start having a discussion about him. But the Bates one really stings. Real Robinson also said, guess we got to learn about Ben Sinnott sooner rather than later. Second round pick, by the way. Basically, it's time to perform. And I mean, hey, Zach Ertz is available to go out there and receive passes and stuff like that to be a true receiving threat. He's out here forcing defensive holdings like it's nothing. He has a touchdown in each of the first 2 games of this season. So we're in good hands receiving threat-wise in Zach Ertz. But John Bates is the best blocking tight end in the NFL, bro. He's a huge reason why our run plays are so successful, so efficient, so often. So Ben Sinnott, the guy that got Tress Way hurt because he couldn't block Abdul Carter on the punt blocking, I don't know, man. It's time to grow up, bro. We need you right now, especially with Max Crosby in town. It's going to be you and Josh Connolly, I guess, working together to somehow block Max Crosby together. But Josh Connolly without John Bates versus Max Crosby is a little scary. Even if Ben Sinnot's helping him, I'm scared. So that may even play a role into whether or not they let Jayden Daniels go out there at all or not. The fact that John Bates isn't available to help pass protect for Jayden Daniels could hurt Jayden Daniels' chances of playing in this game with him already banged up. And now, mind you, everything we've talked about so far in the first 30-something minutes of this video was from Monday only. Then Tuesday, September 16th, the Commanders signed guard Tyler Cooper and wide receiver Tate Martin to the practice squad. Remember, Tate Martin was making plays throughout the preseason and throughout training camp as well for the Commanders. That's a familiar name, familiar face. He already knows the offense. Why not bring him to the practice squad? And then they also placed guard Darian Dalcourt on to the injured reserve list. So that's somebody that was apparently already on our practice squad. He got hurt. He's on the injured reserve list as well. So now your practice squad is back to the right amount of numbers. But also, breaking news, Preston Smith worked out for the Washington Commanders according to Phil Yates, man. And I know y'all remember Preston Smith, bro. That's a very familiar face right there, bro. He was the guy that we always felt like, man, he can get a bunch of pressures. He constantly get pressures. They just don't result in sacks, bro. He's always this one step away from it being sacks, man. It's always right there. Remember, we drafted him in 2015. And he played in every game possible till he left to go to Green Bay. And then even with Green Bay, he basically played in almost every game possible there. Like, he's Mr. Dependable when it comes to health and not having to deal with injuries up until the 2024 season, I guess. And then he spent some time with Pittsburgh. It didn't go too well. But again, from 2015 through 2018 with the Washington Redskins and maybe even football team at the time, that guy didn't miss a single game. I mean, now granted, with him up there in age, he's now age 33? So, he's not going to be even as good as he was back then for us, which again, he was always one step away from a sack. So even if we do sign him, I'm not expecting immediate huge production from him, but he's a safe veteran presence that maybe if you bring him in, then plus, that's a cool emotional reunion with the Commanders, but I'm not expecting him to be our big time defensive end signing that saves the day now that Dietrich Wise is hurt. So the Commanders also worked out other players. Along with Preston Smith, they also worked out defensive end Quentin Jefferson, because again, Dietrich Wise is out for the season. That's a defensive end from Maryland. So we'll see how that goes. I'm really interested in seeing how that, if a local guy, maybe he goes out there and balls out, because Javon Kinlaw is a local guy. I believe Eddie Goldman is as well, and they've been playing pretty well for us this season. We'll see. Then you also have guard Nick Broker from Mississippi. You have Tyler Cooper, guard from Minnesota, who we ended up signing. And then you also have let me look at the rest of the list. Then you have Virginia Tech guard Preston Smith, I think. That's another local guy. But they ended up signing Tyler Cooper, so I guess he won the job over those other two guards. And then, of course, Preston Smith, defensive end from Mississippi State. So we'll see where this goes, man, with the whole Preston Smith situation. That would be a really emotional, cool reunion. Even if we do sign him, though, I don't think he starts over like Dorrance Armstrong and those guys. And I'm assuming right now, Javonte Jean-Baptiste may step up. I'm not sure if he starts, but he will get significant playing time now with Dietrich Wise out. Von Miller will play more. Dorrance Armstrong, even though he's already starting, may play a little bit more as well as part of the rotation. And again, Javon Kinlaw may even play on the outside more often now. I think he's mostly played at defensive tackle so far, but even though he has gotten some snaps at 5 tech, I'm interested to see if he just plays flat out edge rusher this upcoming game against the Raiders. We'll see. And also, before we get up out of here, Dan Quinn admitted that they were way too passive against the Green Bay Packers. He talking about the loss on the Green Bay Packers throughout all of these injury updates that he gave. He said, we're at our best when everyone is attacking. We missed the mark on that and don't plan to again. Thank you, bro. I don't know why we were so passive. The end of the first half, where we ended up having to kick a 58-yarder because y'all took y'all foot off the gas. Went into halftime with 3 timeouts like they transferred to the next half, or the next game or something. I still don't understand that. We were just way too bad. We weren't going for it on 4th downs. We only went for it on 4th down with our backs against the wall, and you had to. That wasn't our identity last year. We were going for it on 4th downs in the first quarter last year for no reason type of stuff. What happened to that? So thank you, Dan Quinn, for at least admitting it and acknowledging the fact that y'all did not do a good job of keeping that identity going for the Washington Commanders against the Green Bay. You go against a better opponent and suddenly you forget how you play football. I don't like that. So at least they've acknowledged it, and hopefully moving forward, they will act like it. So we'll see. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if you love everything discussed in the video. Please still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release a performance of an opinionated video just like this one. And the answer to your trivia question is Big Bird. Now, this is well before my time, so I'm gonna definitely have to go look at some Joe Lavender highlights, because 6'4", 190 pounds is crazy for a corner. That's kind of like the cornerback prototype that people are trying to look for now, like DJ Pickett that's going to LSU and guys like that. Like, yeah, again, I'm heavy into recruiting, so I know this type of stuff. Like, that's an insane prototype, bro. That's what people are literally looking for right now. This guy was already setting the trend back then. So shouts out to legendary Redskins history right there. If you already knew that answer without having to look it up or wait for me to tell you, salute to you. And of course, especially right now, shouts out to my Watch to the End gang, man. Really appreciate y'all. If you're still watching me and listening to me right now, I salute you personally. Shouts out to my late night crew, because by the time y'all get this, it'll probably be like 1-something a.m. while I'm recording this still currently right now at 12:23 a.m. But make sure y'all leave a like on the way out. And of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything. Do you feel like we should throw Jayden Daniels out there against the Raiders? How do you feel about the signing of running back Chase Edmonds? Do you feel like we're going to potentially end up trading for a big star running back from a team that, you know, this may be just desperate to just get some draft capital because their season already looks like it's going down the drain? Let me know how you feel about everything. How do you feel like we're going to end up replacing Dietrich Wise? And also, let me know if you agree with me that the Dietrich Wise injury is probably a bigger loss to the Commanders than even Austin Eckler, even though get well soon to both of them. But man, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video, though. The reunion of Preston Smith, potentially with the Washington, not Commanders, but the burgundy and gold, I guess. Let me know how you feel about all of that. Leave a like on the way out. Really appreciate y'all. I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.